tidings, ladies and gentlemen of the lodge, and welcome back. Hope you are all ready for a wild one, because today's topic of discussion is none other than the incoming sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake, that being Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The recent teaser has had everybody talking for a variety of reasons. Whether you're crafting theories or comparing localizations, the fact of the matter is the Final Fantasy VII discussion has geared up the last month or two. I myself have had a theory I've been working out for quite a while now, and with the addition of a couple of details in the recent teaser, those being the ones on your screen, I believe this theory has become relatively plausible. It's a little bit out there and a bit mind-bending, but hey, that's exactly what the doctor orders when it comes to Final Fantasy VII, and I believe for a variety of reasons, part of the narrative direction of this new trilogy is in a sense to merge the player with Cloud. What exactly do I mean by this? Well, let's get into it, shall we? So before we continue, allow me to say that there are going to be massive spoilers for OG Final Fantasy VII in this video. If you are trying to stay spoiler-free, now would be the best time to leave. But now let's dive in. So before we get into the finer details, allow me to be straightforward with the concept. I believe part of the narrative direction of the Final Fantasy VII trilogy is to confuse the player in much the same way Cloud's distortions are confusing him. Now, you can make the argument that this narrative direction was used in the original game, but due to so many limitations, among other things, there wasn't a whole lot Square could do in this regard. However, as far as the FF7 trilogy is concerned, the table is perfectly set for Square to pull this move. Not only do they now have the ability to better convey these things, what with the major leap in graphics, addition of voice acting, among other things, they also have people's memories and perceptions of the original that they can tamper with. And therein lies the key right there. Let's remember that Final Fantasy VII relies on there being an unreliable narrator. That narrator being Cloud himself. So before we move forward, please allow me to clear up what exactly an unreliable narrator is. Let's go with this definition here. An unreliable narrator is a narrating character or storyteller in a literary or other artistic work, such as a novel, play, song, or film, who provides inaccurate, misleading, conflicting, or otherwise questionable information to the reader or audience. And of course, when we think of Cloud Strife and his distorted memories of the past, we see exactly how he fits into this unreliable narrator trope. And again, storytellers will use an unreliable narrator because what it does is gives them an upper hand on twists, turns, and the element of surprise. More on that later. But what if we, the player, go into the game knowing that Cloud is an unreliable narrator? Well, it diminishes the impact of his journey. However, the way FF7 solves for this I find to be quite amazing. If you can get the player to question what is reality and what is fiction, if you can get the player to question whether or not Aerith can be saved, if you can get the player to question what Sephiroth's plan is, if you can get the player to question everything, then you will have in effect given the players themselves a feel for what Cloud is going through. But now we have to ask ourselves, why is it important to give the player and Cloud similar perceptions? Well, as previously stated, this certainly helps to refresh the unreliable narrator, as now our visions of the future and the past seem to be as fuzzy as Cloud's. But why else? Well, let's keep in mind that the original Final Fantasy VII was a game that also relied on unforeseen twists and turns, whether it be Aerith's death, the truth of the Nibelheim incident, or everything involving Zack. These were revelations that upon our first playthrough blew our minds and solidified the impact of the original Final Fantasy VII. Take away that level of suspense and surprise, and all that impact is diminished. So in a story that made its impact using an unreliable narrator, as well as unforeseen twists and turns, we can see why not only Square wanted to mix things up, but also why they may want to merge the player themselves into an unreliable narrator as well. It puts the ball back into the devs' court and now allows them to put the player in a feeling of suspense, because none of us know what the future holds now. Just like Cloud, that feeling of suspense and element of surprise are crucial to Final Fantasy VII's narrative, which is why the more I think about it, the more I am beginning to understand the narrative direction of the Final Fantasy VII Trilogy. Now look, I am not saying that I'm 100% certain of any of this, but when we consider the idea of merging Cloud and the player in a sense, we see how this is able to restore a lot of the narrative impact of the original game, showing us that Zack's alive, Biggs is alive, Aerith seems to be aware of the events of OG, Sephiroth seems to be aware. When we start pooling all of this together, we see that our memories and perceptions of both the original and what's taking place in the FF7 trilogy have become distorted, leaving us, in a sense, in as helpless a position as Cloud himself. But with Rebirth on the horizon, we won't have to wait too much longer to find out. What are you most looking forward to in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Do you agree that there is a merge between the player and Cloud taking place? Let me know. But anyway, you all be good out there, be good to yourselves and each other, and I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.